I'm Boris, 28 years old, and I've always been the forgotten child in my family. My parents made it clear from day one that my sister Amanda was their golden child. But nothing prepared me for the day they announced a dream vacation to Hawaii and told me I wasn't invited. That vacation was the final straw in a lifetime of being second best. What they didn't expect was returning to find half their house empty and me gone without a trace. The looks on their faces when they realized I'd taken everything I'd ever paid for priceless. Before I dive into this story of family betrayal, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from. Hit that like button and subscribe to join our community of real-life stories that might just validate your own experiences. Growing up in suburban Boston, I always sensed something was off about how my parents treated me compared to my sister. Amanda is 2 years younger than me, and from the moment she was born it seemed like I became invisible. Where I was quiet and thoughtful, Amanda was outgoing and theatrical. My parents, Robert and Linda, seemed to connect with her energy instantly, while my reserved nature left them unsure how to relate to me. The signs of favoritism were subtle at first, but became glaringly obvious as we grew older. When I was 12, I started noticing that Amanda always got new clothes for school while I was stuck with whatever still fit from the previous year. My parents would brush it off with excuses like, "Boys don't care about fashion," or, "We'll get you new things next time," but next time rarely came. What hurt more than material things was the emotional inequality. When I had my first saxophone recital in 7th grade after practicing for months, my parents showed up 15 minutes late and left early because Amanda had a stomachache. Yet they never missed a single one of her dance performances, sitting front row with flowers and taking hundreds of photos. Christmas mornings in our house were particularly painful. I'd watch as Amanda unwrapped the latest gaming console, brand new bike, or whatever was on her wish list, while I received practical items like socks, school supplies, or books from the clearance section. One year when I was 16, Amanda got a brand new smartphone while I received a $50 gift card. When I politely mentioned the disparity, my mother said, "Amanda needs more encouragement than you do. You're so self-sufficient." That became their favorite justification for the unequal treatment. I was mature, independent, low maintenance, all code for "we don't need to invest as much in you." Despite everything, I worked hard in school, hoping academic achievement might finally earn their attention. I graduated high school with a 4.2 GPA and earned a partial scholarship to State University for engineering. My parents attended my graduation, but spent most of the ceremony talking about how Amanda would likely be valedictorian when her time came. After college, I landed a decent job at a local engineering firm. The starting salary wasn't impressive, but it offered stability and growth potential. Rather than move out immediately, I made the decision to stay home to save money for a down payment on a house. This decision, while financially sound, put me back into the daily dynamics of our unbalanced family. What my parents didn't acknowledge was that after moving back, I began contributing significantly to household expenses. I paid $500 monthly for rent, covered the internet and streaming services, and often bought groceries. Meanwhile, Amanda, who had dropped out of community college and worked part-time at a boutique, lived completely free of financial responsibilities. My parents justified this by saying, "She's still finding her path." I also became the default handyman and tech support. When the dishwasher broke, I researched models, paid half the cost of a new one, and installed it myself. When their computer crashed, I spent an entire weekend recovering their files and setting up a backup system. I even paid for new living room furniture when the old set became too worn, though my parents later referred to it as their purchase when showing friends. Through all of this, I suppressed my growing resentment. There was always a voice inside me saying, "They're your parents. Family sticks together." I kept hoping that eventually they would see my value and appreciate my contributions. Maybe they'd realize how much I was doing for the family. Maybe they'd finally see me. But that recognition never came. Instead, there was always more to do, more to give, more to sacrifice. In family photos displayed around the house, I noticed how I was often positioned at the edge, easy to crop out, while Amanda was front and center. During family gatherings, relatives would gush over Amanda's latest adventure or job prospect, while my stable career and contributions merited only passing mentions. Still, I maintained the peace. I avoided confrontations. I told myself that family harmony was worth the internal discomfort I felt. I convinced myself that eventually something would change. Then came the dinner announcement that would finally shatter my illusions about my place in this family and set in motion a chain of events that would change all our lives forever. It was a Friday evening in April when my life took its defining turn. Mom had made her special lasagna, which usually signaled some kind of family announcement. We all sat around the dining table I had refinished last summer with my own money and time. "We have exciting news," my father announced, looking particularly pleased with himself. He glanced at my mother, who was practically bouncing in her seat. "Your mother and I have been saving up, and we've booked a family vacation to Hawaii." My sister Amanda gasped, dramatically clutching her chest. "Oh my God, are you serious, Hawaii? Like actual Hawaii?" 10 days in Maui, Mom confirmed. "We leave in 3 weeks." I felt a genuine smile spread across my face for the first time in months. A family vacation was exactly what we needed. Maybe this would be an opportunity for us to reset our relationships, to connect on neutral ground away from the patterns of our daily lives. "That's amazing," I said already, mentally calculating how to arrange time off work. "I've always wanted to see Hawaii. Do we have specific plans for activities, or are we playing it by ear?" A strange silence fell over the table. My father suddenly became very interested in his lasagna, and my mother's smile tightened. "Well," she said carefully, "that's the thing, Boris. We could only afford 3 tickets." The words didn't register immediately. "Oh," I said. "So we're going at different times, or is someone staying in a different hotel to save money?" Another uncomfortable silence. "No, honey," my mother continued with that same tight smile. "What we mean is, Amanda will be coming with us and you'll stay home." I felt like I'd been slapped. "You're taking Amanda and not me." It's not like that, my father jumped in. "It's just that funds are tight right now with the economy and everything. We could only manage 3 tickets. Then why not draw straws? Or take turns somehow? I could join you for part of the trip, and Amanda for the other part," I suggested, struggling to keep my voice level. "Boris," my mother said with a tone I recognized all too well, the one she used when explaining something obvious to a difficult child. "Amanda has been under so much stress with her job search. She really needs this break. You're established in your career. You're more independent. You understand, don't you?" What I understood in that moment was that nothing would ever change. I wasn't being left behind because of money. I was being left behind because I was always the one who could be left behind. "Sure," I said, my voice hollow. "I understand. That's why you're the best big brother," Amanda chimed in, reaching over to squeeze my arm. "Always so understanding." The rest of dinner passed in a blur of Hawaii talk. Which beaches they'd visit, the luau they'd attend, the snorkeling spots they'd explore. I nodded and smiled at appropriate intervals, while something cold and final settled in my chest. After dinner, I retreated to my room and sat in silence, staring at the wall. Through the floor, I could hear them in the living room laughing and excitedly discussing details of their upcoming adventure. My father mentioned something about renting a convertible, an extravagance that contradicted their claim of financial constraints. Later that night, I overheard my parents talking to Amanda in the kitchen. "Make sure you don't post too many vacation photos on social media," my mother was saying. "Boris might feel left out." "He'll be fine," my father replied. "He's always fine." The 3 weeks before their departure were painful. Every day brought new preparations that excluded me. Shopping trips for new swimwear and summer clothes. Guidebooks spread across the coffee table. Discussions about restaurant reservations and excursions. I maintained my composure, even helping them research the best spots for authentic Hawaiian food. When my mother struggled with the online check-in, I walked her through it. When my father worried about leaving the house empty, I assured him I'd keep an eye on everything. The night before their departure, I helped them pack. My mother seemed momentarily uncomfortable when I handed her the new beach bag I'd bought her as a gift. "That's so thoughtful," she said. "Are you sure you're okay with us going without you?" "It's fine," I said, the lie coming easily after so much practice. "Someone has to hold down the fort, right?" The next morning, I drove them to the airport. Amanda bounced in the back seat, listing all the Instagram photos she planned to take. My father reviewed their itinerary for the 10th time. My mother reminded me about watering her plants and checking the mail. At the departure terminal, I unloaded their luggage and stood awkwardly as they prepared to enter the airport. "We'll bring you back something nice," my mother promised, hugging me briefly. "Have fun," I replied, forcing a smile. I watched them disappear through the sliding doors, my sister turning once to wave excitedly. Then I got back in my car and drove home to an empty house that had never really felt like mine, despite everything I had contributed to it. As I pulled into the driveway, I realized this was the first time in years I had the house completely to myself for an extended period. 10 days of solitude stretched before me. 10 days to decide what I wanted to do with the rest of my life. The house felt unnaturally quiet as I stepped inside. Without the constant background noise of my family, I could hear the subtle creaks of the floorboards and the hum of the refrigerator I had purchased last winter when the old one died unexpectedly. I wandered through the room, seeing our home with fresh eyes. In the living room stood the entertainment center I had built from scratch. The couch I had saved for months to buy when Mom complained about backaches from the old one. The smart TV I had gifted the family for Christmas 2 years ago. In the kitchen, my coffee maker sat on the counter next to the stand mixer I'd bought Mom for her birthday, which she'd used exactly twice. The dining room featured the table I had refinished and the chairs I had reupholstered after a weekend workshop. It was startling to realize just how much of what made this house comfortable had come from my wallet and my labor. Yet in family conversations, these items were always referred to as our new couch or the TV we got last year. Curious about what else I might discover, I ventured into the rarely visited guest room closet where family albums and memorabilia were stored. I pulled out photo albums dating back to my childhood, settling onto the floor to flip through them. The visual evidence was undeniable. In family vacation photos from when I was 10, Amanda was front and center on my father's shoulders at Disney World while I stood slightly apart. In Christmas morning pictures, the camera had captured Amanda's expressions of joy, while I was often partially out of frame or caught in awkward transitions. Then I found something that made my heart sink. Hidden behind the regular albums was a smaller one I'd never seen before. Inside were photos from a weekend trip to New York City, a trip I had known nothing about. Based on the dates on the theater tickets used as bookmarks, this secret excursion had occurred during a weekend when I was working overtime on a critical project. I continued searching and found evidence of other outings I'd been excluded, from a folder of receipts from a ski weekend tickets to concerts. I would have loved to attend brochures from museums in Chicago with dates that coincided with a time I'd been told everyone was visiting my aunt who was too ill for extra company. The truth hit me with crushing clarity. This Hawaii trip wasn't an anomaly. It was part of a pattern so ingrained that they didn't even see it as wrong anymore. With methodical determination, I began a financial audit of my contributions to the household. I retrieved bank statements, credit card bills, and receipts I had fortunately saved in my filing cabinet. Over the course of several hours, I created a spreadsheet documenting every major purchase I had made for the house, every bill I had paid, every repair I had funded. The total was staggering. In just the past 3 years, I had contributed over $20,000 beyond my agreed rent. Money that had effectively subsidized my parents' comfortable lifestyle and Amanda's free ride. I found receipts for furniture my parents had proudly shown off to relatives as their purchases. I discovered that the emergency loan I had given my father for car repairs had never been repaid despite his comfortable salary at the insurance company where he'd worked for 20 years. That evening, I called my best friend Tyler, someone who had witnessed my family dynamic for years but had always been tactful in his observations. What he exclaimed when I told him about the Hawaii situation. "Boris, that's messed up. You literally bought their dishwasher last year and they can't take you on vacation." "I guess I've been blind," I admitted. "I kept thinking if I just did more, they'd finally see me." "They see you," Tyler said gently. "They see you as the reliable one they can always take from without giving back. That's not love, that's exploitation." His words hit hard. "So what do I do?" "What do you want to do?" he countered. For the first time, I allowed myself to consider that question without the weight of family obligation clouding my judgment. The next day, I scheduled an emergency session with Dr. Marshall, a therapist I had seen briefly during a stressful period at work. I recounted the recent events and my discoveries. What you're describing sounds like a classic family dynamic, where one child is designated the responsible one, and another is the one who needs help, she explained. These roles become comfortable for everyone, except the person carrying all the weight. But they're my family, I protested weakly. Yes, and family should be the people who value you most, not the least, she replied. The question isn't whether you're related by blood. The question is whether this relationship as it stands is healthy for you. It's not, I admitted for the first time. Then what boundaries do you need to set for your own well-being? That question lingered as I drove home. Boundaries. The concept seemed foreign when applied to family, yet it was exactly what I needed. As I pulled into the driveway of the house that contained so many of my possessions but so little of my spirit, I made my decision. I deserved better. I deserved to be valued, to be considered, to be seen. If my family couldn't offer that basic respect, I needed to create a life where I could find it elsewhere. That night I slept better than I had in years, with the clarity of purpose that comes from finally acknowledging a painful truth and deciding to act on it. The next morning I began planning my exit with the same careful attention to detail that I applied to my engineering projects. This wouldn't be an impulsive reaction, but a thoughtful reclaiming of my life and dignity. It was time to build something new, a life where I was more than an afterthought. With 7 days remaining before my family's return, I began implementing my plan with methodical precision. First, I needed a comprehensive inventory of everything I had purchased for the house. I moved room by room with a notepad documenting each item, along with approximate value and date of purchase. The list was longer than I had initially realized. The living room television and sound system, the dining room table. I had refinished the patio furniture, the new water heater, the refrigerator, multiple small kitchen appliances, and countless decorative items that my mother had admired in stores, and I had later bought to please her. Next came the apartment hunt. I wanted something close enough to my workplace to reduce commute time, but far enough from my parents' house to avoid accidental encounters. I spent hours on rental websites creating a spreadsheet of options with pros and cons for each location. By the third day of my solitude, I had scheduled viewings at 5 promising apartments. The second property I visited, a modern one-bedroom with large windows, a small balcony, and a reasonable rent, immediately felt right. The property manager, a friendly woman named Barbara, seemed impressed by my preparation and financial documentation. Most people your age don't have their finances this organized, she commented as she reviewed my credit report and bank statements. I've been planning this move for longer than I realized, I replied, surprising myself with the insight. By that afternoon, I had signed a lease agreement, beginning immediately with the first month's rent and security deposit paid from my savings account. I now had a new address, a new starting point. The next day, I visited the apartment with measurements and began ordering essential furniture for delivery. A bed, a couch, a dining table, kitchen essentials, only what I would need immediately. I could build the rest of my home, gradually choosing each item with purpose rather than necessity. I took 2 personal days from work to focus on the logistics of my move. I contacted a local moving company and scheduled them for the day before my family's return. Then I began the careful process of packing my belongings, starting with my bedroom. As I sorted through years of accumulated possessions, I made thoughtful decisions about what to keep. Some items held painful memories of trying to earn approval that never came. These I donated. Others represented genuine achievements or happy times, independent of my family's validation. These I carefully packed. The most complicated part was determining the ownership line for household items. I was determined to be scrupulously fair, taking only what I had genuinely purchased with my own money. I gathered receipts where I had them and bank statements showing purchases where I didn't. I created a detailed spreadsheet documenting each item I planned to take its purchase date, price, and method of payment. I made copies of all receipts and supporting documentation. I wasn't planning to steal anything. I was simply reclaiming what was legitimately mine. By day 5, my bedroom was packed into labeled boxes, and I had begun carefully removing my items from the shared spaces of the house. I worked systematically, filling the garage with packed boxes ready for the movers. On day 6, I visited my new apartment again to accept deliveries of my new furniture. I spent a few hours arranging the basics and setting up utilities in my name. The space was taking shape, becoming mine, in a way the family home had never been. That evening I sat at the dining room table and composed a letter to my family. I wrote and rewrote it several times, striving for a tone that was clear and firm but not vindictive. I wanted to explain my actions without seeking to hurt them as they had hurt me. The final version read, "Mom, Dad, and Amanda, by the time you read this, I will have moved out of the house. This decision hasn't been made hastily or emotionally, but after years of feeling undervalued and taken for granted in this family. The Hawaii trip was simply the final confirmation of what I've felt for years, that I am not considered an equal member of this family. While I understand that parents sometimes have favorites, the disparity in how you've treated Amanda and me has gone beyond preference into something harmful. I've taken only what belongs to me, items I purchased with my own money. I've left detailed documentation of these purchases on the computer desk. You'll notice many things missing because, as you may be surprised to learn, I've been financially supporting this household far beyond my agreed contribution for years. I don't share this to request repayment or to make you feel guilty, but simply to explain why so many items will be gone. This isn't theft. It's me finally recognizing my own worth. I've changed my phone number and email address. I need space and time to build a life where I am valued. Please respect this boundary. I wish you well, Boris." I printed the letter and placed it in an envelope on the kitchen counter, where it would be immediately visible upon their return. That evening I changed my phone number, created a new email address, and set up mail forwarding to my new apartment. I informed my workplace of my new contact information, asking them to keep it confidential for personal reasons. On day 7, the morning before their return, the moving company arrived promptly at 8 o'clock. 3 efficient movers worked under my supervision, carefully loading my boxed possessions and the furniture I had documented as mine. By early afternoon, the house looked strangely hollow. The living room without its television and entertainment center, the dining room with an empty space where the table had stood, the kitchen missing the refrigerator and several appliances. I did a final walkthrough, making sure I had left nothing behind that I wanted, and taken nothing that wasn't rightfully mine. I cleaned my bedroom thoroughly, stripping the bed and vacuuming the carpet. Before leaving, I stood in the entryway and looked at the house that had been my home but never really my place. I felt no sadness, only a strange lightness, as though setting down a heavy burden I had carried for too long. I locked the door, left my key on the hook in the garage, and drove away to begin my new life. I spent that night at Tyler's apartment, my phone turned off, trying to distract myself with pizza and video games, while anticipating the storm that would erupt when my family returned home the following afternoon. "You okay?" Tyler asked during a pause in the game. "You seem a million miles away." "Just wondering how they'll react," I admitted. "Part of me wants to be a fly on the wall. Based on what you've told me about them, I'm guessing there will be drama," Tyler said. "Are you prepared for that?" "As prepared as I can be," I replied. "I've documented everything. I've only taken what's mine. They can't argue with facts. But of course, family dynamics rarely operate on facts alone." The next day, I kept myself busy setting up my new apartment, arranging furniture, and unpacking essential items. Around 4 o'clock, knowing their flight was scheduled to land at 3, I finally turned my phone back on. Not my old number, but a temporary prepaid phone I had purchased, just to monitor the situation through mutual friends. I didn't have to wait long. At 4:30, a message from my cousin Rachel popped up. "What happened at your house? Your mom just called my mom hysterical, saying you've stolen everything and disappeared." I didn't respond, but it confirmed they had arrived home and discovered my absence. At 5 o'clock, Tyler called. "Your dad just called me 3 times in a row. I didn't pick up, but he left a voicemail demanding to know where you are. He sounds furious." "Did he mention the letter?" I asked. No, just that you've stolen half the house and better have a damn good explanation. By evening, I had received messages from 5 different relatives and friends, each reporting similar outreach from my panicked and angry parents. Apparently, they were systematically contacting everyone they could think of who might know my whereabouts. From these reports, I pieced together their reaction. According to my aunt, when they first entered the house, they thought they had been robbed and nearly called the police before finding my letter. My father had apparently had a shouting fit in the driveway that attracted the attention of several neighbors. My mother was alternating between tears and angry declarations that I had broken her heart. Amanda was reportedly in shock, repeating that she never thought I would do something like this. The next morning I went to work as usual, having notified my supervisor about my change in living situation and the possibility of family members trying to contact me there. Security had been briefed not to provide information about my schedule to visitors. It was a precaution that proved necessary. Around lunchtime, my supervisor stopped by my desk. "Your parents are downstairs," she said quietly. "Security didn't let them up as you requested. Do you want to speak with them?" I took a deep breath. "Not today. I'll deal with this on my terms, not theirs." She nodded, respecting my decision without asking for details. "They seem pretty upset. Security said they might wait in the parking lot." "Thanks for the warning," I said. When I left work that evening, I spotted my father's car immediately. He and my mother were sitting inside, scanning the exit doors. I considered slipping out another way, but then decided against it. This confrontation would happen eventually. It might as well be now on neutral territory. As I approached my car, they spotted me and rushed over. My father's face was flushed with anger, my mother's eyes red from crying. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" my father demanded, his voice carrying across the parking lot. "You can't just take our things and disappear." "I took my things," I corrected calmly. "Items I purchased with my own money." "That refrigerator was in our house," my mother interjected tearfully. "The television, the dining table, those belong to the family." "I have receipts for every single item," I replied, maintaining my composure. "I paid for them. They're mine." "We're your family," my father shouted. "You don't nickel and dime family." The irony of his statement was almost laughable. "Like you didn't nickel and dime me out of a family vacation?" I asked quietly. That brought a moment of uncomfortable silence. "That was different," my mother finally said. "We explained the situation. We couldn't afford 3 tickets. Yet you could afford a convertible rental," I noted. "And from what I saw on Amanda's Instagram, quite a few expensive restaurant meals and shopping trips." My father's face darkened. "You're being petty and childish. This is about a vacation. You dismantled our home." "No, this isn't about a vacation," I clarified. "The vacation was just the final example of where I stand in this family. This is about years of being treated as less important, less valuable, less worthy of consideration than Amanda." "That's ridiculous," my mother protested. "We love you both the same." "Love isn't just words, Mom. It's actions. And your actions have consistently shown that Amanda comes first every single time." We continued this circular argument for several minutes, until I finally held up my hand. "I've said what I needed to say. I've taken only what belongs to me. I've left documentation proving my ownership. I'm not coming back." "You can't just cut us off," my father insisted, his anger giving way to something that looked almost like fear. "We're your parents." "I'm not cutting you off," I explained. "I'm establishing boundaries. When you're ready to acknowledge how you've treated me and make genuine changes, we can talk about building a new relationship." I got into my car, ignoring their continued protests, and drove away, watching them shrink in my rearview mirror. 3 days later, Amanda showed up at my workplace. Unlike our parents, she took a different approach, waiting quietly by my car, with none of the dramatic confrontation our parents had attempted. "Nice apartment," she said when I approached, surprising me. "I asked around until someone told me the area you moved to. I drove around until I spotted your car this morning." "That's a bit stalkerish," I commented, unlocking my door. "Desperate times," she shrugged. "Can we talk, please? Not here, but somewhere neutral." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a coffee shop a few blocks away. When we were settled with our drinks, she looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "They're really upset," she began. I imagine they are, I replied. Their live-in handyman ATM and emotional punching bag has left. She winced. Is that really how you see it? How else should I see it, Amanda? They left me behind for a vacation they clearly could afford to include me in. That was just the last in a lifetime of moments where I was the odd one out. I didn't realize, she said softly. I mean, I knew they were harder on you, expected more from you, but I didn't see how it all added up. Because you were benefiting from it, I pointed out. She didn't deny it, which surprised me. They want their stuff back, she said instead. Dad's talking about legal action. I laughed without humor. Let him try. I have receipts for everything I took. I paid for it all, not them. The house looks empty, she admitted. I didn't realize how much of the stuff was actually yours. Neither did they, apparently. They just assumed everything in their house belonged to them regardless of who paid for it. Amanda fidgeted with her coffee cup. They're saying you stole from them out of jealousy over the Hawaii trip. They can say whatever makes them feel better, I replied. The truth is, in the documentation I left behind. Did they even look at it? Dad threw it in the trash, she admitted. But I took it out later and looked through it. It's a lot of money you've spent on the house. Yes, it was. We sat in silence for a moment before she asked, Are you really not coming back? Not to that situation, no. I deserve better than to be treated as an afterthought in my own family. What about me? She asked in a small voice. I know I've been privileged, but you're still my brother. I considered her question carefully. That's up to you, Amanda. I'm building a life where I'm respected and valued. If you want to be part of that life, you'll need to recognize the dynamic that existed and not perpetuate it. She nodded slowly. I'd like to try. As we parted, she hesitantly hugged me. For what it's worth, I missed you in Hawaii. It wasn't the same without you. It was the first genuine acknowledgement from any family member that my absence mattered. It wasn't much, but it was something. When I returned to my apartment that evening, I had 3 voicemails from my mother on my work phone, each more desperate than the last, culminating in threats about family heirlooms I had supposedly taken, I hadn't, and warnings about destroying the family. I didn't respond. The family as it had existed was already broken, had been long before I removed myself from the equation. What might grow in its place remained to be seen. In the weeks that followed, I settled into a routine in my new apartment. Each day, the space felt more like home, not just because of the physical items I had brought or newly purchased, but because it was truly mine. I made decisions based solely on my preferences, from the color of the shower curtain to the arrangement of furniture. For the first time, I wasn't considering how my choices would be judged by my parents or compared to Amanda's tastes. I joined a local rock climbing gym, something I had wanted to try for years but had never prioritized. I started cooking for myself, experimenting with recipes rather than conforming to my family's preferences. I even adopted a cat from the local shelter, a quiet, dignified gray tabby I named Archimedes, who seemed as appreciative of our peaceful home as I was. At work, I felt a new confidence that was noticed by my colleagues and supervisors. Free from the constant emotional drain of my family situation, I found energy for creative solutions and leadership opportunities I would have previously avoided. My parents continued their attempts to contact me through increasingly creative channels. When I blocked their numbers, they called from new ones. When I filtered their emails, they created new accounts. They sent letters to my workplace, had friends accidentally run into me, and once even had a pizza delivered to my apartment with a note begging me to call them. I maintained my boundaries firmly but without malice. I returned the letters unopened. I politely but briefly acknowledged their friends before excusing myself. I enjoyed the pizza but ignored the note. About 6 weeks after my move, I received an unexpected visitor at my apartment. My father's brother, Uncle James, who had always been kind to me but lived across the country, was at my door. Your mother called me in tears, he explained after I invited him in. Said you'd stolen everything and disappeared. I figured there had to be more to the story. Over coffee, I explained the situation, the years of favoritism, the financial exploitation, and the Hawaii vacation that had finally opened my eyes. Uncle James listened without interruption, occasionally nodding with a grim expression. When I finished, he sighed deeply. "I wish I could say I'm surprised," he said. "Robert always had a blind spot when it came to your sister, even when you were kids. I've mentioned the imbalance to him a few times over the years, but he dismissed it." "You noticed?" I asked, surprised. It was hard not to notice, especially as an outsider who only saw you all a few times a year. The contrast was pretty stark. He paused. "For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Sometimes people don't recognize toxic patterns until there are consequences." His validation meant more than I expected. Here was a family member who had seen the situation clearly and understood my response to it. 2 days later, my parents escalated their efforts. I was leaving work when I spotted them waiting in the parking lot again. This time their demeanor was different, less angry, more desperate. "Please, just 5 minutes," my mother pleaded as I approached my car. Reluctantly, I agreed. 5 minutes, here in the parking lot. "We want you to come home," she began immediately. "Whatever issues you think we have, we can work them out as a family." "I don't think we have issues, Mom. We do have issues, serious ones, and they won't be solved by me moving back into an environment where I'm constantly devalued." My father stepped forward. "Look, we've discussed it and we realize we may have shown some favoritism toward Amanda over the years." It was the first acknowledgement, however mild, that they had ever made. "But taking all your things and disappearing without warning was an extreme overreaction," he continued, undermining his momentary insight. "You hurt your mother deeply. You embarrassed us in front of the neighbors. The house looks ransacked." I took what belonged to me, I repeated for what felt like the 100th time, and I left a detailed explanation. "Those things were part of our home," my mother insisted. "A home I helped build and maintain while being treated as an outsider," I countered. "I'm not having this circular argument again. You haven't heard anything I've said." "We hear you," my father insisted. "You felt left out of the Hawaii trip. We get it. We'll plan another vacation and include you next time." His complete misunderstanding of the depth of the issue was almost impressive. This wasn't about a single vacation. It was about a lifetime of subtle and not-so-subtle messages that I was less important, less loved. "This isn't about Hawaii," I said firmly. "This is about 28 years of consistent favoritism and taking me for granted. One vacation promise doesn't fix that." "So what do you want?" my father demanded, frustration evident in his voice. "Money. Is this some kind of extortion?" "I don't want your money," I replied, keeping my voice level. "I want acknowledgement of the pattern. I want genuine change. I want respect." "We respect you," my mother protested weakly. "Your actions say otherwise." Our conversation continued in this vein until I finally checked my watch. "Your 5 minutes are up. I have nothing more to say until you're ready to truly listen." As I drove away, I felt a strange mix of emotions, sadness for the relationship we might have had, but also pride in my ability to maintain boundaries despite their pressure. The following week, I received an email from Amanda asking to meet again. This time we met at a park near my new apartment, walking along a tree-lined path as we talked. "They're still upset," she began, "but differently now. Less angry, more confused, I think." "Confused about what?" "About why this is such a big deal to you. They keep saying they don't understand why you're blowing everything out of proportion." I shook my head. "That's exactly the problem. They can't even see it." "I've been thinking about what you said," Amanda continued, surprising me. "About how they treated us differently. And you're right. I never had to earn anything. Everything was just given to me while you had to work for every bit of recognition." Her admission was unexpected. That couldn't have been an easy realization. It wasn't, she agreed. "I've been looking back at our childhood, our teen years, everything, and seeing it through your eyes. It's uncomfortable. I benefited from the imbalance without ever questioning it." "Most people wouldn't question a situation that works in their favor," I pointed out. "That doesn't make it right," she replied. "I've been trying to talk to Mom and Dad about it, but they get defensive immediately. They're still fixated on the stuff you took." "Because it's easier to be angry about missing appliances than to examine their behavior for decades," I suggested. Amanda nodded slowly. "I told them they need to really listen to you, not just wait for their turn to speak. I'm not sure it sank in, though. As we walked back to our cars, Amanda hesitated. "I miss my brother," she said simply, "and I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening all these years." It was the most genuine thing she had ever said to me. "I appreciate that," I replied. "Maybe we can build something new, something healthier." The next confrontation came from an unexpected quarter. One evening, I received a call from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Boris, it's Barbara, from next door, your parents' neighbor." The older woman who had lived beside our family home for 15 years sounded concerned. "Your parents are telling everyone you stole from them and abandoned the family. I wanted to hear your side." I explained the situation, briefly emphasizing that I had taken only what I had personally purchased. "I thought it might be something like that," she said. "Your father was always quick to show off new things but never seemed to mention they came from you. I remember when you installed that beautiful patio set last summer. He was bragging about it at our neighborhood barbecue, as if he'd picked it out himself." "That sounds familiar," I agreed. "Well, for what it's worth, not everyone believes their version of events," she said firmly. "Several of us noticed over the years how they treated you versus your sister. It wasn't right." It was oddly validating to know that even relative strangers had observed the disparity that my own parents refused to acknowledge. About 2 months after my departure, the final confrontation occurred. My parents showed up at my apartment unannounced. Amanda must have given them my address, though I couldn't bring myself to be angry with her for it. When I opened the door to their unexpected knock, they pushed their way inside before I could object. "So this is where you've been hiding," my father said, looking around critically. "With all our furniture." "My furniture," I corrected, as the receipts I left clearly showed. "We want to resolve this situation," my mother said, sitting down on my couch without invitation. "This has gone on long enough." "I agree," I replied calmly. "Have you come to apologize for the years of favoritism and take responsibility for the toxic family dynamic you created?" My directness caught them off guard. They exchanged glances. "We may have made some mistakes," my father admitted grudgingly. "All parents do. But this extreme reaction is unwarranted." "Is it?" I asked. "Because it took me literally removing myself and everything I've contributed to your lives for you to even acknowledge there might be a problem. That seems like a pretty entrenched issue to me." "You're twisting things," my mother protested. "We've always loved you." "Love isn't enough, Mom. Respect, fairness, consideration. Those matter too." My father's patience finally snapped. "Enough of this therapy talk. We want our things back. The refrigerator, the TV, the furniture, they belong in our house." I walked to my desk, retrieved a folder, and handed it to him. "Here are copies of every receipt, bank statement, and credit card bill, showing that I purchased those items with my own money. They were never yours to begin with." He flipped through the documentation, his face growing redder by the moment. My mother looked over his shoulder, her expression changing from indignation to confusion as she saw the evidence. "But we thought," she began. "You thought wrong," I said simply. "You assumed everything in the house was yours because you never acknowledged or valued my contributions. Just like you never acknowledged or valued me." My father closed the folder with a snap. "This isn't over," he threatened weakly. "Actually, it is," I replied. "You have no legal claim to anything I took. If you want to pursue this further, we can involve lawyers, but I assure you, you won't like the outcome." They left shortly afterward, defeated by facts they couldn't dispute and a truth they were still unwilling to fully face. As I closed the door behind them, I felt no triumph, only a sad certainty that they might never truly understand what had been lost. Not refrigerators or televisions, but the relationship with their son that could have been built on mutual respect rather than exploitation. 6 months passed, and summer turned to fall, then winter. In that time, my new life took shape in ways I hadn't anticipated. My apartment became a true home, filled not just with the material possessions I had reclaimed, but with new items chosen specifically for this fresh chapter. Each purchase, from art for the walls to books for the shelves, represented a choice made solely for my satisfaction rather than to earn approval or fill someone else's needs. Professional growth followed my personal evolution. At work, I accepted a promotion to project lead, a position I might previously have declined out of fear it would take too much time away from my family obligations. My colleagues noticed the change in me, a new confidence, a willingness to speak up, a comfort in my own skin that had been missing before. What surprised me most was how my social circle expanded once I was free from the constant emotional drain of my family situation. I joined a book club, started attending community events, and reconnected with old friends who had gradually drifted away during the years I was too consumed with family drama to nurture those relationships. Among those new connections was Jessica, a landscape architect I met at a volunteer event for the local park. Our relationship developed slowly and thoughtfully, built on mutual respect and clear communication, qualities I now recognized as essential rather than optional. "You're different from most guys I've dated," she told me one evening as we cooked dinner together in my apartment. "You're so intentional about everything. The way you listen, the way you express what you need. It's refreshing." I learned the hard way what happens when relationships lack clear boundaries and honest communication. I explained, sharing some of my family history. "Their loss is my gain," she said, simply squeezing my hand. My relationship with my immediate family evolved in unpredictable ways during those months. My parents cycled through various approaches: anger, guilt bargaining, and eventually a strained acceptance that our relationship had fundamentally changed. Contact was minimal, but not completely severed. Occasionally, my mother would send a text message about a family event or holiday gathering. I responded politely but maintained my boundaries, declining invitations that felt like attempts to pull me back into old patterns rather than build something new. What surprised me was the outreach from extended family. Uncle James stayed in regular contact, calling every few weeks to check in. My grandmother, who had always been quietly supportive but deferential to my parents, began sending me handwritten letters that acknowledged the family dynamics in her own subtle way. "Your grandfather was like your father," she wrote in one letter, "always playing favorites with your aunts. I wish I had been braver in addressing it then. I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself in a way I never did." My cousin Rachel, who had always been closer to Amanda, reached out through social media. "I never realized how they treated you," she wrote. "But looking back, it was so obvious. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." These connections felt healing in a way I hadn't anticipated. Acknowledgement from family members who recognized the truth of my experience, even when my parents couldn't. The most significant change came in my relationship with Amanda. About 4 months after my departure, she called me with unexpected news. "I moved out," she said, a mix of pride and uncertainty in her voice. "Got my own apartment. I'm paying my own rent." "That's a big step," I replied, genuinely happy for her. "What prompted it?" "You partly," she admitted. "Seeing you build your own life made me realize I was stuck in this weird child role at 26, but also, things got strange after you left. Mom and Dad started putting all their focus on me, and it was suffocating. I finally understood a tiny fraction of what you were talking about. We began meeting regularly for coffee or dinner, building a sibling relationship that for the first time existed independent of our parents' influence. It wasn't always smooth. Amanda had years of conditioned behavior to unlearn, but it was authentic in a way our previous interaction never had been. "They talk about you all the time," she told me during one of our dinners. "The house feels empty without all the stuff you bought. Mom keeps saying the new refrigerator they had to buy doesn't work as well as the old one." "Do they ever acknowledge why I left?" I asked. She shook her head. "Not really. They frame it as you being oversensitive or going through some kind of phase. But I think deep down they know. They just can't admit it to themselves." The most dramatic development came around the 6-month mark of my departure. My mother called one Sunday afternoon, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "We'd like to talk," she said. "Your father and I. No agenda, no demands. Just talk." I agreed to meet them at a neutral location, a quiet coffee shop halfway between our homes. When I arrived, they were already seated, looking smaller, somehow less certain than I remembered. "Thank you for coming," my father began stiffly. "We appreciate it." "What did you want to discuss?" I asked directly. My mother took a deep breath. "We've been doing some thinking, and some talking with a counselor." That surprised me. My parents had always dismissed therapy as something for weak people. Amanda suggested it. My father explained correctly, reading my expression. Said we needed outside perspective. The thing is, my mother continued, we didn't realize. We didn't see how our behavior affected you. It wasn't a full acknowledgement, but it was more than they had ever offered before. We're not saying we did everything wrong, my father added quickly, but we recognized there was an imbalance in how we treated you and your sister. And we miss you, my mother said simply. The house isn't the same without you in it. Or without all the things I bought, I couldn't help asking. My father flushed. That's not fair. Yes, we miss the conveniences, but we miss our son more. We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering ground we had never explored before. They listened more than they had ever listened, though old defensive patterns emerged periodically. They didn't fully grasp the depth of the damage done, but they were trying. Awkwardly imperfectly, but genuinely trying. We'd like to start over, my mother said as we prepared to leave. Not pretending nothing happened, but building something new. Would you be open to that? I considered her question carefully. I'm open to trying, I said finally, but with clear boundaries and expectations. I won't return to the old dynamic. That's fair, my father conceded. As I drove home, I reflected on the strange journey of the past 6 months. I had left home feeling angry and undervalued, determined to create distance between myself and the source of my pain. What I hadn't anticipated was how that distance would create space for healing, not just for me, but potentially for all of us. I had no illusions that one coffee shop conversation had solved decades of dysfunctional family patterns. True change would take time, effort, and consistent action from all parties. There would be backsliding defensive reactions and difficult moments ahead. But for the first time, I faced those challenges from a position of strength rather than need. I had built a life that was fulfilling on its own terms. I had created boundaries that protected my self-worth. I had discovered that family, whether biological or chosen, should be a source of support and respect, not a drain on your spirit. The most valuable lesson I learned through this experience was that sometimes walking away isn't an ending but a beginning. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to accept treatment that diminishes you, even when that treatment comes from those who are supposed to love you most. And sometimes that refusal becomes the catalyst for change that would never have happened otherwise. I don't know what the future holds for my relationship with my parents. Perhaps we'll build something healthier than what came before. Perhaps we'll maintain a distant but cordial connection. Perhaps they'll eventually revert to old patterns and I'll need to step back again. What I do know is that I'll face whatever comes from a place of self-respect and clear boundaries. I know my worth now, and I won't settle for being anyone's afterthought again, not even family. If you've stayed with me through this story, perhaps you've recognized elements of your own family dynamics. Maybe you're the forgotten child, the responsible one, the one who gives more than they receive. If so, remember that you deserve recognition, appreciation, and equal standing in your relationships. Sometimes setting boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for everyone's growth. What about you? Have you ever had to make a difficult decision to protect your self-worth? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to hear more real-life stories, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to stand up for themselves, even against family. Thank you for listening, and remember your value isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to treat yourself.